going on? This is Seth with SethPerler.com, and I thought I'd spend some time today telling you a little bit about why I left the teaching profession. So, what happened to me was that I was a horrible student as a child, and literally in first grade, my report cards started having negative comments like that I was lazy or wasn't trying hard enough or wasn't applying myself or whatever. And I didn't know, nobody knew at the time that I had inattentive type ADHD or that there was anything going on that I was struggling with. And so what happened was that year after year after year, I struggled more and more in school. And then I started getting tested for learning disabilities in eighth grade. And they found out that I didn't have learning disabilities. At least that's what they thought because they didn't know about ADHD or anything. But they found out that I was gifted and talented. So really made my parents and teachers especially confused about why is this kid not doing well? Why is he not performing? Why is he not achieving? Things like that. And so I was confused too. I didn't know what was going on. But I was this student who really was a struggling student, and I did not feel successful in school, and I did not feel rewarded by school. The funny thing is that I absolutely positively believe in the power of education to help us launch a great future. That in order for us to have a great future, the key is education. Now, whether or not that education takes place in a school or it's the School of Hard Knocks or any other form of education, there are many, 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 many ways that we can learn, that we can become educated. Doesn't matter. But the point is that in order for us to be able to go for our hopes and dreams, we have to have some sort of education that empowers us. So anyhow, I go through middle school, I go through high school, I don't do very well. I go to college on probation, and I end up failing out of college. So I started at Ball State University, and I failed at Ball State University because I didn't know how to be a student. It didn't matter if I was bright or not. I didn't know how to be a student there. And then I went to a community college in Columbus, Ohio, and I dropped out after 2 quarters before failing out because I was about to fail out of that one. And I just really felt hopeless. So, before I tell you why I left teaching, I'm telling you a little bit about how I got to be a teacher in the first place. So, anyhow, I started working with kids by accident after failing out of college and then dropping out of college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to turn my life around and make something of myself. And I just got this job working with kids, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I found meaning in it. I found that I was good at it. And one day, after months of working at this place in Indianapolis, working with kids from kindergarten to fifth grade, one day I was driving home, and I'm driving down the street in Indianapolis, this curvy street called Spring Mill Road in Indianapolis. And I had this little Mazda 323 stick shift, and I'm driving. I had long hair at the time. My hair is blowing in the wind, and I'm smiling driving home. And I realized that this was meaningful to me and that I wanted to work with kids for the rest of my life. Literally, that was a very rare moment in my life. I've had maybe 10 of them, but that was a game changing moment in my life where I said, you know what, I'm dedicating the rest of my life to the service of kids. I'm going to dedicate my life to helping these human beings have a better life. So then I proceeded to try to get back into college. And I got back into college when I was 25. Now, all my peers in college, I went back to become a teacher at the time. I decided that I would serve kids and I'd become a teacher. And I got back into Indiana University, and all my peers, I was 25, 24, 25, they were all 18, 19, 20, and so it was a very interesting time for me, but I was there on a mission. I knew why I was there. I had a little bit more maturity in the sense that I was very mission driven, and I always have been mission driven. So, anyhow, I go through college. I end up student teaching on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and then I ended up starting my teaching career on the Navajo Indian Reservation. Now, you should know that my purpose for teaching was to be of service, was to serve humanity, was to be helpful to children, was to help them have a great life. It was not to help them get good test scores. It was not to help them get good grades. It was to inspire them. It was to help them fall in love with education because my education felt so bad. It was very important to me to help these students really shine and really have a great life. So from day one, I was always very focused on the purpose of education, which I think a lot of times gets clouded as teachers are going through their career. They lose sight of the purpose. They lose sight of why they started that in the first place. And I just happen to never have lost sight of that. Well, I was very lucky in a lot of ways with my teaching experiences because I got to teach on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and this is a place that a lot of people would say, "Oh, I would never want to do that." Because I had no resources, we had no money, we had no textbooks, we had virtually no curriculum. We had a pink stacks of papers that were the Arizona standards at the time, and pretty much designed my curriculum. And to me, that was one of the biggest blessings in my entire teaching career was that since we really didn't have much, I had to creatively design things. And since these kids, I had kids in fifth grade when I was on the Navajo Indian Reservation. I had kids in fifth grade that were reading at like the kindergarten level, and some that were reading at the seventh grade level. So I had this huge, huge gap of ability levels in all subject areas for my fifth graders. So I really had, and I didn't, since I hadn't taught before that, I really didn't know. I didn't have any background to know what it was like in other places. So I just felt free to be creative and to create curriculum that would be engaging. And to this day, I feel that the number one most important thing for a teacher to do as a as they're teaching their kids is to be engaging, is to create engaging curriculum. I call it creatively differentiated curriculum. That's my own term that I like to use that describes how I design curriculum, creatively differentiated curriculum. But that's not what usually happens. Now, I do think that's the number one most important word is engagement, but I think the number one most important thing for teachers to do in order to empower their kids to be engaged is they have to create emotional safety first. So to me, it takes the first 4 to 8 weeks of school to create an environment of emotional safety where students know that they are safe to learn, because if they don't feel safe with a teacher, they're not going to be able to learn. And obviously, I get students now in my practice who don't feel emotionally safe around their teachers, and they withdraw, they shut down, they say, "My teacher hates me," things like this. So, creating an emotionally safe environment for students is absolutely key, in my opinion. So, anyhow, I taught for 12 years. I taught on the Navajo Indian Reservation. I taught in New Mexico and in Arizona. I ended up teaching in Colorado. I taught in Thornton, Colorado, with a primarily Hispanic middle school, and I taught in a gifted and talented school in Colorado, and a different gifted and talented school that was primarily for 2E kids, and in a very and in another school in Colorado that was a very structured school in a very linear type of environment. So I taught in all these different environments and had all these different experiences with math, science, social studies, reading, writing, teaching all these subjects. I also started a creative writing camp for kids, and I also I got to teach preschool special education, third grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. And so I had all these wonderful different experiences. And in some of the school environments that I taught in, I had a lot of freedom again with curriculum and being able to design things that were creative and that were engaging. And I also taught in situations where it was very driven by standards, by testing, by data, and where there was not a lot of creativity or thought about how to make it interesting or engaging, but more about how do we jump through the hoops that we're expected to jump through. So in those type of educational settings that I've taught in, it was very stifling for me, where I felt stuck and I felt like it was rigid, and I felt like we were doing things that that were just not necessarily in the best interest of kids. Either way, all the different situations that I taught in had certain levels of dysfunction. And for me, as somebody who came from a place where I was a kid who almost failed out of high school, failed out of college, felt like crap about myself as a student from first grade on, felt different. I had a lot of consequences. I was grounded a lot. Um, I had teachers saying things about me that I was lazy or that I didn't try or that I didn't care or things like this. And I took a lot of that shame on. I had to work through that stuff as an adult. But being in schools where there is dysfunctional stuff going on in the teacher's lounge, or with certain teachers in the school, or the way that administration dealt with teachers, or the way that administration dealt with families, One of the schools I was at, we had 7 or 8 different administrators in 7 years, I believe. And every time you have a new administrator, the whole culture of the school is shifted. It was just, there were some very disruptive things. And while I was trying to be of service to students, I kept running up against these experiences where I felt like the dysfunction that I was seeing was interfering with my ability to serve. And I believe that it interfered with other teachers' ability to serve. See, because I perceive teaching as an art and a science. And I think that the standardization movement, standardized tests, the fact that we still use letter grades, even though it's 2018 and letter grades are way archaic and outdated, and many, 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 many other things that I think are just very outdated and not optimal for learning, still go on. Those things really, really frustrated me at a very deep level. I felt that other teachers were not empowered. Like I said, I believe it's an art and a science. And I think that teachers are craftsmen, they're craftspeople. They have a craft, they have an art, and their job is to develop their craft, to become masters of their craft. Yet when we tell teachers, you've got to follow this curriculum this way, you've got to follow this prescription, and then schools will change the curriculum in different subject areas every few years and say, just kidding, now we're going to use this curriculum. This is the new latest and greatest. I think that that disempowers teachers. I think that it deprofessionalizes the career. Over 50% of teachers leave by year 5. This is an astounding and depressing statistic to me. Teachers are so burnt out by year 5 that they leave something that they spent at least 4 years in college, and some who went on to get a master's and they spent all this time in college, all this money in college, all this heart. I mean, being a teacher is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever do. I think parenting is the hardest job you'll ever do, but being a teacher is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever do. You're before school, people think you have summers off. No, teachers work during the summer. Good teachers work developing curriculum and prepping for the upcoming school year during the summer. They're also recovering from the past school year. And then they often get to school early. They work through their lunches. They don't have enough planning time. They work at home at night. They work on weekends. And they're doing this for the kids, and they're not paid what they deserve to be paid, in my opinion. And they're not given the resources they need, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyhow, I was really struggling and suffering in terms of my own conscience. I was there to serve, and I felt like I was being stifled. And I felt like other teachers in the system were not being empowered to build their craft. They were being told, do what you're told, follow the curriculum, fit in this box, follow these rules. And I think that I saw a lot of teacher burnout happen too. A lot of teachers who were really suffering from just overwhelm. They weren't able to have the time for self care that they needed. Well, I did not get into teaching to lose myself, and I was losing myself in it. I really didn't have the time. I know in order to serve my kids, I didn't have the time for my self care. Plus, I felt like my ability to serve, like I said, was being stifled. So, whereas maybe my potential for service is, let's say, 100%, I was at maybe 60% of my ability to serve because there was 40% of my energy was going to things that I did not believe. Impacted students in a meaningful way. Some of the data collection that we were required to do, some of the reports that we were required to do, just some of the way that we were required to do grades. I remember I was at one school and we had these grade card report things that were supposed to be more simple, but they were pages and pages of standards that we were supposed to determine how a kid was doing on so many different metrics, and it took so much time to do those. I remember it took me about a week just to do the grades on these things, not including all the time that I had spent prepping the grades throughout the entire semester. Anyhow, it was just stifling. It's like teachers are human beings. They need to have time for self-care, for family time and stuff like that, and time to develop engaging, creative, differentiated curriculum that's going to meet the needs of a wide range of students. So I was getting burned out, and I was getting really frustrated that I was there to serve, and I couldn't do it to the extent that I wanted to. So, a couple years before I left teaching, I started really thinking about how can I be of more service, and who do I believe I was put here to serve. And what I found for me is that my favorite students to serve were struggling students, were students who had executive function issues, were twice exceptional students, gifted and talented students that were falling through the cracks. Really, any student that was struggling, I enjoyed working with. That was what I felt like was my thing. I love a challenge. I love helping them find what their strengths are. I love helping them move forward in life. I love helping them feel good about themselves and understand how awesome they are. So that was what I gravitated towards. And I started saying, well, how can I create something? Because I knew I didn't just want to be like an ADHD coach, because I felt that that was stifling. In the ways that I saw it, like what I saw ADHD coaches doing was not what I wanted to be doing. I knew that being a counselor, I'd considered becoming a counselor, and I didn't want to feel stifled and feel like I only had 50-minute sessions and I could be right in the middle of working with someone and I have to say, oh, clock's up, you have to go. That wasn't for me. Um, and I didn't want to be a tutor and I didn't want to be this and that, but I really wanted to hone my skills on serving who I felt like I was meant to serve, and on doing it in a way that was meaningful, and on being able to have powerful relationships with the families that I worked with. I believe that I don't just work with a student, but that I work with a family, and I wanted to create something where I could help the parents as well. And I wanted to be open ended, and I wanted to be able to not be boxed into a certain type of student, but really help families understand all types of different things that are important to understand if you're really going to try to help your child. For example, emotional regulation is huge for me. Social emotional education is huge for me. Executive function obviously is huge for me. All of these things that I really believe in. Being engaged, and I'm in the unique position where I'm trying to help I'm now in my coaching practice. I'm trying to help students navigate a system that isn't built for their brain. So it's a really complicated situation where, and I don't want to be in a career where I'm lying to my family. So I have created something where I'm able to tell my students, yeah, I agree, that's busy work. Yeah, you probably won't use that for the rest of your life, but we got to do it anyhow. How do we do it as painlessly as possible? How do you still balance your life doing that? But I'm helping them problem solve in these ways. Anyhow, I've been able to create something that really was meaningful and powerful to me. I'm in my 8th year of it. It's been a lot of hard work creating it, but I wanted to make this video just to tell my story for anybody who's interested on why I left teaching. And just to put it in a nutshell at the end of this video, I was there to be of service and have a good life myself. And I felt like my ability to serve was compromised because of systemic dysfunction. And I felt that my ability for self-care and having a good life that I deserved, and the appropriate reward for the work and the service that I was bringing to my community, I was not able to achieve that in with the teacher salary and the amount of hours that that were required in order to do what they were asking us to do. So I made that change. It was very hard because I love teaching. I love the art of teaching. I love connecting with students. I love changing lives. I love a challenge. I love inspiring them. I love engaging them. I love designing creatively differentiated curriculum. Um, I love the whole ecosystem of working with these students. I didn't love the system. And so leaving was very hard, to sort of make that shift and say, okay, I'm letting this go. I'm done. I'm at my wit's end. The last straw has happened, and I'm going to make a shift, and I'm going to create my own thing and see if I can do this and believe in what I believe in and follow my heart and create something that is really meaningful to me. So I did that and it worked, fortunately. But so many teachers who leave teaching never set foot in a classroom again and never work with kids again. And it is such a shame. Imagine 50%, over 50% of the teachers by year 5. It's just incredible to me. They're gone. They're not working with kids anymore. We need these people so desperately, but they're so burnt out that they left. So Anyhow, that's my story about why I left. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can click subscribe right now, and it'll give you alerts if you want every time I post a new video. And if you like this video and you want to respond, you can email to me or leave a comment in YouTube or on the blog, or on Facebook or whatever. But I would love to hear what you think and what your experience is as a parent or a teacher, wherever you're at, or what your thoughts are. I'm very, very, very curious to hear from other people what your story is, and how you perceive my story, and what you think we can do about this. Um, because I do think that education is the most important job in the world, and our kids, we are leaving them with a world of problems that they are going to have a good education in order to be the people who solve the problems that they are growing up with. Very complex problems, and I do not think we're doing a good enough job prepping them for this world. But anyhow, what do you think about all this stuff? I'd love to hear it, and thanks for listening to my story. Take care.